Hello everyone, this is Fine from Tech Gaming Villa. I hope you all are well. Today I'm going to talk about the True TV, the Hisense U6H and Hisense U7H. You know, Hisense may not have the brand recognition of the big three like LG, Samsung or Sony, but surely is drawing a lot of consumers' attention due to their very aggressive pricing compared to the specifications they offer in their TVs. As with every TV brand, Hisense has released their latest 2022 lineup, which began to look at with the recent Hisense A6H, and I'm going to talk about the Hisense U6H. The U6H is supposed to replace last year's Hisense U6G. That TV offered some very tasty features for a low cost entry level unit. So I'm curious to see what, if any, changes Hisense did 2022 model. The most impressive aspect of this TV is its price. The Hisense U6H is using a 60Hz VA panel with a full array local dimming backlight with local dimming, while a quad-core processor takes processing duties. Unlike the big three, Hisense has equipped the U6H with both HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision support, which is a major plus, while Dolby Atmos is also available. Lastly, the TV comes with the latest Google TV 11.0, which seems to be standard in all Hisense TVs for 2022. On paper, the U6H seems to be awfully similar to last year's release. So I have to dig deeper to see if there are any actual differences between the two, or the U6H is more of a minor upgrade over the U6G. The pricing is right, but what about its performance? You clearly see the Hisense U7H a bit better TV than Hisense U6H. The Hisense U6H is usually using a typical bench type stand. The legs are made out of metal, an improvement over last year's plastic ones. The legs sit almost at edges of the TV, so make sure you have big enough furniture for it. Its remote, the one I found in the U6H, is the same redesigned remote I saw in A6H. The remote is made out of plastic. It feels is in general good, and while it is IR based, which means it needs line of sight to work, it can also be connected through Bluetooth in order to use its microphone and voice command features. The remote may not look as premium as some competing brands, but it will do what it was meant to. And to be honest, with such a low price tag, you shouldn't expect anything more than this. The Hisense U6H is a typical low budget TV. Its design is different from 2021, but fundamentally offers the same things. The new remote is welcome improvement, and it's far more practical than before. If you see its video quality, in general, the brand name they use is High-View Engine 4K, and its quad-core CPU with the MediaTek MT9900 SoC. As for its capabilities, these are the standard for such a low-tier TV and includes 4K upscaling as well as basic noise reduction feature. The Hisense U6H once again uses full array local dimming backlight system, just like as its predecessor, which may be better than the low-end Edge LED ones, but has been surpassed this year by the new mini LED ones. A full array local dimming system, in order to perform good, depends on two factors: the number of dimming zones available and how fast each zone can change its light output. The more dimming zones used, the better and more accurate light control the TV has. But also, the higher the price goes, that's why they usually scale the dimming zones number depending on the model. The effect on having low number of dimming zones can be seen when you see a very bright object on a completely dark background. If the TV has very few zones, light will escape to the nearby pixels and create a visible halo around the object. Also, the light algorithms play a huge role as they control the response time of the various dimming zones. If the change is slower than it should be, you will see what is called ghosting, when a bright object moves very fast against a dark background. In the U6H, the full array local dimming system is again a mixed bag. On the one hand, you have a backlight that certainly offers better light control over an Edge LED or a direct LED one. But the problem here is, once again, the very few zones the TV has to handle. The 55-inch model is using only 32 zones, which are simply not enough to show the real strength of the full array local dimming system. Bigger sizes may be using more zones, but I could not verify this ourselves. The low number of zones had various effects on the image quality. Blooming was visible, but it was not so bad as I'm expecting to be. What was more obvious was the slow response of the zones, making a bright object show when it was passing from one zone to the next. The Hisense U6H behaved very similar to the Hisense U6G. It has all the same advantages as well as weaknesses, so not much of a difference here. One of the most important but not the only one factors of any HDR TV is its brightness. And this is where LCD technology always excelled at compared to OLED. Hisense is one of the few companies that actually provide specific brightness numbers for their TVs, and it seems that the Hisense U6H gets the same 600 nits marketing claim like the U6G was last year. For this first part, the HDR brightness over a 10% window, and the number I got was 502 nits, which is really good for its price range, but falls short of that 600 nits claim. HDR content does not have high brightness requirements, so what the U6H can output is more than enough. When it comes to HDR brightness over a 10% brightness, I measured 571 nits, which again is good enough, although it cannot obviously compare to the top tier offerings, and again fell short of the 600 nits promotional material. The numbers above indicate that U6H fared slightly worse than that 2021 U6G in both HDR and HDR brightness test. This is a bit disappointing as the U6G was able to even exceed Hisense's claims of 600 nits, something that was not possible with the U6H, at least according to this test. Brightness levels followed the UOTF reference values very close, although in most cases they were slightly brighter than they should be, up to its smooth roll-off point, with most details being preserved due to this. The TV uses a VA panel, and as a result, contrast was really good and on par to what I saw in the U6G. When you enable local dimming, things improve even further, but not by much, and the difference is not so noticeable as in other TVs. If you see the viewing angle using a VA panel, means that the U6H would suffer a lot in terms of viewing angles. VA panels in general have trouble with this, so it's not a problem of the U6H in particular. Some manufacturers tend to use extra layers in order to improve this problem, but this TV, being a low-cost model, does not seem to be using any similar technology. As such, the best angle I could get out of the U6H was once again around 30 degrees at maximum. Anything more and image quality takes a dive pretty quickly. As such, the U6H cannot be considered a family-friendly TV where many members will be watching at the same time at different spots. But since what it is acceptable, image quality is very much a personal thing. I could suggest you to try it out in a local store in order to be sure if you like it or not. With the current HDR world, you really have to choose which camp you want to follow, as not many brands support all very available ones. It's either Samsung's HDR 10 Plus or Dolby Vision that Sony and LG support, which is really a shame as I don't get the chance to choose all of them at any time. Thankfully, Hisense is one of the few brands that are not supporting any specific camp and instead went ahead and added everything in their releases. As such, the Hisense U6H supports not only the basic HDR 10 but also HLG, which is used for the streaming content, and both HDR 10 Plus and Dolby Vision, which use dynamic metadata for a much better image quality outcome. The U6H actually gets a small upgrade here, and as it now supports both Dolby Vision IQ and HDR 10 Plus adaptive. These technologies consider environment, lighting, making HDR more accurate at depicting how dark or bright the lighting is within your specific room light conditions. Let's analyze the TV's color performance now. Hisense U6H belongs in the ULED family of TVs, meaning it comes with quantum dot technology. This results in the TV supporting wide color gamut and thus display more accurate and lifelike colors. Now, according to these measurements, the Hisense U6H covers about 95% of DCI-P3 color space, which is very good considering the category of this model. On wider Recon 2020 color space, I got 74% coverage, which again should be considered very good for the given price. On calibration, the U6H had really good out-of-the-box performance, something that will surely please most casual users. White balance and gamma were pretty accurate, while only a few colors had values above the delta E limit of 3. You can still make a few adjustments to make the image even more accurate, but I can say that even with its default values, the TV performed extremely well and can do admirably without any further calibration. When it comes to color gradients, the U6H was not as good. I noticed obvious banding in darker shades, and there is little you can do about it. This is one area where the U6G seems to fare better than the new model. If you see the motion performance, the Hisense U6G comes with a 60 Hz panel, which certainly has negative effect on the TV's motion performance. U6H also the same. One thing that I noticed is that the U6H's backlight is pulsing at a slower rate, 480 Hz, than the U6G did 960 Hz, which means that flicker could be more visible in certain instances. On the other hand, it seems that Hisense added motion interpolation, which was absent in the U6G. As a result, U6H can interpolate low frame rate content up to 60 Hz. Unfortunately, the motion interpolation feature is only good with less intensive senses, as when a lot of camera movements are happening, artifacts become more obvious, which can be bothering and distracting. I also get black frame insertion, which basically is a motion interpolation technique that inserts a black frame between every two individual frames, and this can really create much smoother motion. But while the end result is pretty good, there are some downsides to this, with the most obvious being the lower brightness being displayed due to the black frames. It seems that the BFI feature of the U6H has all the same problems it had in the U6G, meaning that image duplication becomes more than obvious in certain scenes. Overall, I cannot say that the Hisense U6H improved a lot here. On one hand, I get motion interpolation, which was absent last year, but the U6H's performances seem to be slightly worse than what we saw in the U6G. The difference is not big, but it is definitely there. If you see the Hisense U6H input lag, it's really low, 12.7 millisecond input lag in both HD and 4K resolutions, which is excellent and will satisfy even the most demanding of gamers. With such a low input lag, gaming can really be a pleaser, but in order to get such a low value, you have to keep in mind that you need to use the available game mode. I'm surprised last year the Hisense U6G was able to do low enough input lag even outside game mode, but this is not the case with the U6H, as this time I measured 112.5 millisecond average in HD and 4K resolutions, which is very high even for casual standards. So if you plan to play games with this TV, then make sure that game mode is enabled in order to get the best out of it. Another addition in the U6H is the inclusion of VRR support. The unit supports both HDMI 4 VRR and FreeSync, but not G-Sync. VRR is supported in the 48 to 60 Hz range and can surely help a lot at reducing screen tearing. For testing, connected to PS5 to the U6H and played a bit of Horizon Forbidden West, which gave us a 4K signal at 60 Hz with VRR engaged. Everything looked phenomenal and the image was completely tearing free in terms of response times. With the game mode engaged, all the commands registered blazingly fast on the screen, which created a really pleasant half-hour gaming session. If you are in need of a low-cost gaming TV and you do not care about 4K 120 Hz gaming, the U6H is the perfect one for you. Nothing more to say here. Overall, the Hisense U6H is mixed bag because I cannot either say it is a clear improvement over last year or worse than the U6G. On the one hand, the U6H added HDR10 Plus adaptive and Dolby Vision IQ has slightly better color coverage, while I get motion, interpolation, and VRR support that were both missing last year. Add to the above the excellent out-of-the-box performance it has, and surely the TV will appeal to many casual users seeking the best quality possible without much fuss. On the other hand, peak SDR and HDR brightness was lower. There was visible banding in many of the darker shades, while both motion performance and input lag scored lower than last year. So in the end, it depends what you really need the TV for. The differences are not extreme, and most will not be able to tell them apart. If you want the best image quality possible, the U6G is the way to go. But if you cannot find it, or if the VRR and motion interpolation are absolutely important to you, then the U6H comes really close, and for this price you cannot really go wrong with it. So another TV, you see the Hisense U7H. The Hisense U7H is slightly better than the Hisense U6H. Hisense U7H delivers slightly better picture quality with a better local dimming feature and slightly better contrast. The U7H also gets brighter, so it can handle a bit more glare if you are in a bright room. The Hisense U7H supports more advanced gaming features and delivers a better gaming experience as it has a 120 Hz panel and HDMI 2.1 bandwidth, meaning it can take full advantage of the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. If you are about to upgrade from a non-HDR TV, be it 4K or HD, the Hisense U7H's picture quality is going to impress you. It offers sufficient brightness to deliver impactful HDR highlights and higher color brightness than non-HDR TVs, while maintaining deep enough black levels to pull off impressive contrast. The U7H's out-of-the-box color accuracy on the sample delivered shockingly good color accuracy with no adjustment. And while motion resolution was not quite as smooth as, say, the more expensive TCL 6 Series TV, it is still better than most low to mid-tier TVs. Dollar per dollar, the Hisense U7H is one of the most impressive TVs you can buy this year. I measured the Hisense U7H's peak brightness in HDR at just over 800 nits. This was in filmmaker mode with the backlight setting maxed out. In HDR, I measured sustained peak brightness at around the same 800 nit level, 819 to be exact, with peaks coming in just under 1000 nits. The U7H comes in well under the more expensive U8H in terms of peak brightness performance. And in a side-by-side comparison, it's clear the Hisense U7H doesn't have quite as much punch in bright highlights and color brightness, but that speaks more to the U8H's insanely bright picture quality for its price than the U7H, which remains one of the brighter TVs in its price segment. Bear in mind that I believe 1000 nits peak brightness is the bar for whether an LCD-based TV really delivers a meaningful HDR experience. And LCD TVs, black levels generally are not as good as an OLED TV panel. So they need a bit more brightness to really sell that HDR contrast. That leads me to what's really surprising about the Hisense U7H. Unlike the U8H, this TV does not have a mini LED backlight system. So in addition to lowering expectations around peak brightness, also had lowered expectations about the overall black level and how much blooming control the TV could exert. But the Hisense U7H is remarkably impressive in the backlight control department. It passes the usual torture tests with impressive authority. I was never bothered by blooming, which has Hisense U6H has some bloom. Anyways, that murky halo of light around a bright object on a black background. There is some here, but it is not distracting. Even off-axis, the blooming isn't as apparent as I'm used to. The result of the decent peak brightness and good backlight control is a quite good HDR presentation. Part of that is aided by the Hisense U7H's mostly solid tone mapping, by which I mean that it retains details in the bright highlights well. It's not as good at maintaining shadow details, but the low luminance performance is definitely good for a TV at this price and even stacks up well against more expensive TVs. Now I am to talk about the Hisense U7H's color. I'm not kidding here. I was blown away by the color measurements I got. In fact, the accuracy was so suspiciously good that I did a hard factory reset on this TV, then ran a firmware update, then tested again just to see if I got the same result. This kind of out-of-the-box color performance is virtually unheard of for a TV at this price. Anyways, the results were phenomenal after firmware update. In HDR, the color checker errors averaged out below 3, which is technically not perceptible to the human eye, and that was with zero adjustments to white balance. The maximum error was under 4. So even the worst color error is hardly worth talking about. In HDR, I got the same results. This kind out-of-the-box color performance is virtually unheard of for a TV that at this price. And in fact, it makes me want to go back and measure the Hisense U8H again, because I don't think the more expensive TV performed this well. As for the white balance on the Hisense U7H, I barely had to touch it to get to D65, which is the Hollywood reference standard in the low color temperature, which is meant to be warm. It had a little too much blue in it, which is typical. I backed the blue gain down a few points in HDR and HDR, and the errors were barely over 1. That's just ridiculously good from a measurement perspective. The TV is capable of achieving incredibly good performance with a calibration, which cannot be said of all TVs at this price level. Let alone TVs costing more. As always, the performance of one retail TV to another will have subtle variations. If you see the motion is definitely U7H is better than the U6H. I noted an odd shimmering effect when watching certain high-resolution HDR content on YouTube. The effect is documented in the video at the top of this post. After further testing, I have determined this shimmer is related to the content and not the TV performance. While the shimmer effect is present on TVs from other brands, it isn't as apparent. This may speak to a combination of factors, including both sets, hard brightness, pixels, response time, and processing. Even it rarely shows up, I don't consider this to be a significant enough issue to reduce the TV's scores. In other matters of motion, I feel like without any motion smoothing on the U7H doesn't look as smooth and natural as, say, the TCL 6 series. But then again, neither did the U8H. So no real changes there. All those numbers up into a takeaway, I think what you need to know is that the Hisense U7H is a remarkable performer across the board. Way better than I expected in black levels, contrast, and color accuracy. It lacks the muscular punch you get in the other TVs like U8H or U6H. Otherwise, dangerously close in performance to the more expensive TV. For gaming, the U7H is similarly outfitted as the U8H and U6H as well, with this 4K 120 Hz HDMI inputs, variable refresh rate, very low input lag, and auto game mode, and it lights up all the green check marks on an Xbox Series X. But while I'm talking about unlocking the most potential from your game console or PC, I still don't like I have to press this one button on the remote to access the HDMI enhanced mode to unlock all of those features. Though to Hisense credit, when there's no signal going to one of those ports, there is a message that suggests you do exactly that, although it doesn't go into which button to push. Anyways, the Hisense U6H is a 4K 60 Hz TV and Hisense U8H is a 4K 120 Hz TV. It has HDMI 2.1 features, which Hisense U6H not. So definitely I will say Hisense U7H is a best budget TV on 2023. So what's your thought? Please tell me in the comments below. That's it from now. If you like this video, please subscribe and press the bell icon for future notifications update. Thanks for watching.